We are just one day away from the Florida Gators spring game, and I got some opinions about who's going to be MVP on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. Happy Wednesday. I'm Brandon Olson. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Written work with Whole Nine Sports, Giants Country, and NFL 33. But for now, we're focused on the spring game, which is tomorrow. Weather permitting, my assumption, if the weather is too bad, that they just move it indoors, and at which case I'm just hoping that the SEC Network Plus and ESPN Plus just continue that stream. But we're talking about MVP candidates here because I do like this discussion of who's going to pop the most, who's going to dominate the spring game the most. And, well, I tried to limit it to 2 offense, 2 defense, and then I have 2 dark horses. But for offense, it was hard for me because I think the leading candidates are the starting running backs. I think pretty much everybody would unanimously agree, hey, if we're talking about who's going to be the best player at the spring game on offense, you can eliminate any offensive lineman because they don't win MVP on these things. You can't eliminate QB, receivers, tight ends, or running backs, but you're looking at a team that I don't know how much they're going to run in the spring game. I think that's another pretty interesting point to go, okay, well, are they going to run the ball 60% of the time or whatever they want, or are they going to throw the ball more and really see what they have in the quarterback battle? But for now, I'm going with one of the running backs as my leading candidate because, duh. Like, whether or not they run the ball a lot, we know Montrell Johnson is a monster. And we know that Trevor Etienne is just insanely explosive. So will they be involved in the passing game? And that's why they get touches. Will they actually get the ball, 8 to 12 times in this game, which obviously, ideally, each of them get the ball like 15 to 20 times in the actual season. But for now, 8 to 12 times in the spring game, rotate in Cameron Carroll, Trayon Webb, and see what happens there. So I think when we're looking at that, it might be a little hard to win MVP, but I do have someone that I think is, I need to phrase this properly, because I don't think he's more talented than Montrell or Trevor Etienne, but I think he might get more opportunity to kind of show what he can do in this offense, and that's wide receiver Xzavier Henderson, who, I mean, so far he's been annihilating spring ball. He had 3 touchdowns in the second scrimmage. He's been cooking, and he's also developed. Like, even from, like, last year was not a great year for him, which wasn't really his fault at all. But last year wasn't a great year for him. But you could see that he was improved from the year prior. Like, you could see that Xzavier Henderson had made strides as a route runner, which is obviously the most important part of playing receiver, other than really being able to receive the football. So as a route runner, Xzavier Henderson's been developing. I know last year was with Kerry Colbert. This year's back with Billy Gonzalez, but I will always continue my point of Billy Gonzalez is a pretty damn good wide receivers coach. He's not as good as Kerry Colbert, but Billy Gonzalez is a hell of a wide receivers coach. So I'm going to say Xzavier Henderson, continued progress, continued growth. Would love it. I'm also going to say that I'm sure we'll see this in the spring game, but I'm hoping that during the season, we see them do this really interesting thing in Gainesville with Xzavier Henderson specifically. And it's new to football, so I don't think we'll see it too much, but run routes past the line of scrimmage. I'd like to see Xzavier Henderson get the opportunity to do that. Because like I said, he's improved as a route runner. He's not a super shifty guy, but he's got great straight line speed. And that's another thing when you're talking about his spring game outlook and his potential of being the offensive MVP here is, guess what? He gets to zoom by people, and he's pretty freaking fast. And once he gets a step on you, it's really hard to catch him. I mean, look at the Georgia game. He caught that ball, like 8 yards past the line of scrimmage, if that, and just ghosted everybody. Because Xzavier Henderson is very fast. I think he doesn't necessarily look super fast when he's just running, probably because he's got long strides, and so it doesn't necessarily look like his legs are moving like that. Like he's not Kyler Murray, like when he's just like that's my Kyler Murray impression. But he's not like Kyler Murray running out there. He's Xzavier Henderson. He's a longer strider, and honestly, with Justin Shorter gone, I think Xzavier Henderson gets to work vertically more often. That's a discussion for another day. But I am going to say that, yeah, I think I'm ready to lock it in. My offensive MVP prediction, we'll say, is Xzavier Henderson. Just because, again, I think it's all shaping out where the main reason I didn't put one of the running backs is because I think they're going to throw the ball quite a bit to really kind of try to settle Graham Mertz versus Jack Miller III. If they're going to throw the ball a lot, guess who they're throwing to? Receivers. So Xzavier Henderson being the second best receiver on this roster. Xzavier Henderson being improved year after year. Xzavier Henderson getting to work more of his natural X receiver role, which, yeah, it does go with his name. That's awesome. But also it goes with his skill set. He's a better X receiver than he is anything else. I think this is the year that we get to see Xzavier Henderson have his breakout season, have his breakout campaign. And I'm not saying, he's going to go for 1,200 yards this year or anything like that. But last year, Xzavier Henderson had 38 catches, 410 yards, 2 touchdowns. I will be hard-pressed to think he can go 50 catches, 600 yards, 4 or 5 touchdowns. If you could do that, that's a great wide receiver too at the University of Florida. So we're all happy about that one. We're about to look at the defensive side of the ball. But first, today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, which is, by the way, if you didn't know, America's #1 sportsbook, and it's my personal favorite betting app that I use on a not even near daily, on a legitimately daily basis. The play-in started last night. The MLB is cashing. Thank you so much, Pete Alonso. Thank you so much. You've made me quite a bit of money this season early on. Gator legend. Don't miss a chance to sign up and get your no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000 back in bonus bets when your first bet doesn't win when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. And like I said last segment, we talked offense. This segment, we're talking defense. And there's 2 names that I really wanted to throw out there. I'm going to just preface everything by saying there are no defensive backs on this list. And the reason for that being you're not near the ball frequently enough to get the chance to make big plays. Or I'm not going to assume you're going to be. I'm not going to think, oh, Jaden Hill's playing star for the first time in a game setting. They're going to target him. I'm not thinking something like that, and I'm not going to predict something like that because that's foolish to think. You can say they should, but it's foolish to make that prediction. So secondary players, you just can't know if they're going to be near the ball or not, if they're going to be near anything action-wise at all. You know who will be, though? Front 7 players. So my defensive MVP frontrunner and my pick for defensive MVP of the spring game, Princely Umanmielen. Dude's a beast. I've told the story a bunch of times by now. After the 2022 season, I spoke to multiple people in the NFL and not media. I mean, there were people in the media, but multiple people in the NFL that their job, because they're scouts, is to evaluate these players. They watched Javon Dexter. They watch Ventrell Miller. They watch Brenton Cox Jr. And you know what they said to me? Princely Umanmielen is the best player on that Florida Gators defense in 2022. Princely Umanmielen is a beast, and there's no way around it. And he gets to play Jack, which I've spoken about this before, and I think that Princely is one of those guys where you say, and I think that we'll see that as we watch him play this year, it's a lot easier to rush from a 2-point stance than a 3-point stance, in my opinion, and I'm sure in the opinions of others, but obviously it's an opinion. Everyone has one. But it's a lot easier to rush from a 2-point stance than a 3-point stance. And Princely Umanmielen is playing Jack linebacker, so 2-point stance, no hands in the ground. Great. That's great for him to rev up and go. Another major point for me in thinking, okay, Princely Umanmielen could be the defensive MVP of this spring game. New offensive line. He's going up against offensive linemen that haven't had, let's say, many reps together actually pass protecting consistently. You just don't see it a ton. They've had scrimmages, they've had sometimes, but seeing it in game is very different. So Princely Umanmielen is the guy that I'm thinking of as the defensive MVP. I think whoever he's lined up against, because we don't know teams right now, we don't know who's lining up where, whatever it is, Princely Umanmielen should be the favorite. Like if this were gambling, Princely Umanmielen would be the favorite to win. Easily. Again, just for what I said, he's the best player on the defense. He's a great pass rusher against an offensive line that is new and needs to gel, and he's someone that you're going to have to double quite a bit. And so I think when you just watch this game, he's going to pop a lot. He's going to get to make plays against the run and in the pass, and especially if the Florida Gators in the spring game want to throw the ball a lot to figure out their quarterback battle, that means more pass rush opportunities for Princely Umanmielen. So yeah, gonna say he's got all the makings of having a big game right now. Next, Shemar James. That's who it is. Shemar James is the guy that I'm talking about. Not just for, in recent weeks, we've heard people say, yeah, he's a different beast, because mainly because he's more vocal and he's all that. No, not just because that. Because he's so good last year, was so good last year, and has the potential to be great this year. He's also an awesome fit in this defense, this defensive system of Austin Armstrong that's going to say, hey, man, feel free to totally just pin your ears back and run on, up to 30% of your plays as an off-ball linebacker. When you've got that quick first step that Shemar James has, yeah, you get to zoom right at them. And guess what also? You're going to have 4 defenders on the line of scrimmage occupying that offensive line. Okay? At least one of those guys going to be Princely Umanmielen, assuming they're on the same team. One's going to be Cam Jackson, assuming they're on the same team. Desmond Watson, maybe, assuming they're on the same team. Those are guys that tend to get doubled quite a bit. If you are doubling, you have 5 offensive linemen against our 4 defensive front. If you are doubling anybody, you've got all 5 offensive linemen are occupied. Shemar James blitzes, assuming that we see this defense be as aggressive as they can be, and as aggressive as we will probably see them be this fall, I'd expect Shemar James to get his pass rush opportunities. Also, I'm just incredibly interested to see how Shemar James plays, because if the Gators offense throws the ball a lot, we'll see how he is in coverage. If they run the ball a lot, we'll see how he is sifting through traffic and making a play with his nose on the ball. So, yeah, I'm really excited for it. There's no way around that. To wrap up, though, we're going to talk about a couple of, we'll say, dark horse candidates to win MVP. I got one on offense, and I got one on defense. And they're both guys who were not starters last year, which is fun, I think. I will say it's interesting that, on offense, we've got the 2 running backs and Xzavier Henderson, who were all starters. On defense, you got Princely Umanmielen at a new position where he wasn't the premier pass rusher last year, although he was the best pass rusher last year. And you got Shemar James, who's obviously a new starter this year. And then we're looking at the dark horse And it's two guys who are new starters this year, or new potential starters this year, I guess we'll say. Offensively, I put Arlis Boardingham. I did wide receiver, tight end hybrid. I don't know what he's going to line up as on the spring game. I know he's going to be listed as tight end. Is he Jimmy Graham style, where you go, oh yeah, he's a tight end, and then 60% of his snaps are out wide? Probably not, right? You'll probably see him in line. You'll probably see him be the move tight end, whatever it is. You'll probably see him get to play actual tight end. With that, though, comes this little tidbit about Graham Mertz, where Graham Mertz loves throwing to tight ends. This is something you see when you watch the film. And it's not just, oh, well, Wisconsin had so many tight ends on the field, so he threw to them. No, because guess what? Florida had 2 tight ends on the field a ton last year and didn't throw to them. So I think this is more, hey, Arlis Boardingham is here and he's going to play tight ends, and Graham Mertz likes to throw to tight ends. Also, Wisconsin has had some pretty solid receivers in recent years. It's been consistent that Graham Mertz likes to throw to tight end. So you got Graham Mertz likes to throw to tight ends. If he's on the same team as Arlis Boardingham, well, let me tell you, he's going to throw to tight ends because, again, that's what he does. That's what he likes to do. And he's got one of the best mismatch nightmares available, assuming Arlis Boardingham is as advertised, we'll say. And I considered putting Arlis at the top of this offensive MVP, not even a dark horse, but I considered putting him at the top of this list. But I just, I couldn't justify putting him over the running backs if the Gators do run the ball, and I couldn't justify putting him over Xzavier Henderson if Graham Mertz wants to throw the ball a lot, or Jack Miller, or whoever wants to throw the ball a lot, because Xzavier Henderson, again, is looking like a much improved receiver for the second year in a row. So Arlis Boardingham, right there. But I just think with his skill set, he's a mismatch nightmare. I think that I'm very interested to see how Florida is going to have anybody really defending him. Are you going to put Jaden Hill if Arlis is in the slot, or are you going to move a linebacker out there or a safety down, or what's going to happen? So I'm very interested to see how that one works out, just because it's a nerd thing. Never the way to put it. It's a nerd thing. Defensively, my dark horse MVP candidate on the defensive line is not Cam Jackson, is not Desmond Watson or Chris McClellan. It's Justus Boone, who's going to be playing Princely Umanmielen's spot from last year. So you've got your Jack on whatever side he's going to be on, and you got Justus Boone on the opposite side, or next to each other, and just let them both rock. But you've got Jack as Princely Umanmielen. You've got Justus Boone at defensive end. And I mean, it's a similar outlook to why I said Princely should do it outside of, Justus Boone's not the best defender on the team. But this is a new offensive line that they're going to have to be piecing things together quite a bit. You'll probably see Justus Boone go up against, again, depending on which side he's on, Austin Barber, if they're not on the same team, or behind him. That's my point, is that personally, I'm not super comfortable with the tackle depth. So if Princely Umanmielen is against Austin Barber, which personally I'd love to see, then I think Justus Boone is next in line as the defensive MVP behind Shemar James, because guess what? Now you're looking at someone who's going up against a backup tackle, or even if they're a starter tackle, they're not an elite tackle or a great tackle like Austin Barber. I'm not going to say Austin Barber's elite, but he's a pretty damn good tackle. So you're going to see Justus Boone going up against not Austin Barber, assuming that's how it works out, because Princely should be going against Austin Barber. That'd be a hell of a show. But Justus Boone gets to be the one-man wrecking crew next. That's it. Especially if he's on the right side, no matter who it is, Keontae Goodwin, Damian George at tackle. We'll find out what they're made of in the spring game. And that's one of the reasons I love it, because you get to see everybody that you don't get to see fully in depth during the spring game. But Justus Boone's next. Especially, I would like to see if he plays 3-tech at all, like a little bit of D-tackle, just because, well, then he's going up against either guard or Kingsley Aguakin, in which case I think Justus Boone brings like a power that a lot of guys on the offensive line aren't used to dealing with. And I'd like to see Justus Boone get, a one-on-one against the guard and just watch what happens, because I think that'd be just awesome to see. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. We will be back tomorrow, probably to talk more spring game, maybe recruiting, probably recruiting. And also tomorrow after the spring game, I'm going to go live. That's going to replace Friday's show. So no new episode Friday, because you're getting 2 full episodes on Thursday. So that's the plan. And now you know that. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olson. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Whole Nine Sports, Giants Country, and NFL 33. And I will see all of you tomorrow.